Hi everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Tax Tips channel. My name is Cherry Chen, a chartered professional accountant located in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. My mission is to become the Google map for real estate investor for hardworking Canadian seeking financial freedom. Today's topic is about travel expenses. Many real estate investor and small business owner and real estate agents all asked me this question before. I'm going on this trip. Can I just visit the local real estate agent's office and deduct my trip as travel expense? Well, as it turns out, the answer is it depends. And I'm going to go into depth in terms of what can be deducted, how you can deduct the expenses, and stay on the right side of CLA. But before I get into depth in the discussion, please make sure that you hit the button below and subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the little notification button so you can stay on top of the latest tax tips. Now with that, let's get started. Generally speaking, you can deduct expenses that you incur, any reasonable expenses that you incur for the purpose of earning business income or property income, subject to a bunch of exceptions as specified in the Income Tax Act. Whether you're eligible to deduct a trip, you need to be able to answer the question, did you incur the expense for the purpose of earning the income? What is the primary purpose of your trip? Well, a few years back, I spent a few days in Hong Kong visiting my parents as well as attending my grandmother's funeral. The cost of my trip to Hong Kong was about $1,500. And you know how it is, when you're traveling by yourself without kids, you suddenly got lots of time to spare. I used my spare time to do a few marketing videos, wrote a few blog posts, and had worked on my future book as well. So can I deduct my trip to Hong Kong because I worked on my business while I was in Hong Kong? As you can tell, the primary purpose of my trip was to attend my grandmother's funeral. I did spend some time doing some work, but the business-related reasons were very minimal compared to the primary objective of my trip. So the answer to the deductibility of my travel expense is no. I can't deduct the flight and hotel of my trip. But I can deduct the incremental costs I incur for working on the business while I was there. I didn't incur any expenses for my video recordings because I was using my phone, or any expenses incurred in terms of book writings. If I did, those incremental expenses would have been tax deductible. If I had met up with a client or a prospective client to discuss future business opportunities, the meal cost for taking these prospects out would have been deductible. It's just that I would not be allowed to deduct the flight and hotel because the primary purpose of my trip was for business purpose. Let's use a recent court case as an example to explain travel expense, and the primary purpose of travel expense is for the purpose of earning business income. Have you guys heard of this company or the show called Cirque du Soleil? When this court case happened, Guy Liberté, being the controlling shareholder of Cirque du Soleil, decided to take a trip to the International Space Station, so you travel to space, in September and October of 2009. His trip cost roughly $42 million, and his company paid for the entire amount. So he used the funds inside his company to pay for this entire amount. When the businesses pay for the expenses, incur for the benefit of the shareholder, so there is no related business benefit for the business, the shareholder is the one that's receiving the benefit. And the shareholder is deemed to have received the amount paid as the expense as shareholder benefit. What it means is that the shareholder would have to report the shareholder benefit as income on their personal tax returns. In this case, Guy Liberté had $38 million out of $42 million of the expenses deducted in Cirque du Soleil's operation for accounting purposes. He didn't deduct it for income tax purpose or in any other business as well. He also reported $4 million on his personal income tax return, claiming the expense as shareholder benefit. If he's allowed to deduct the $38 million and not report it as shareholder benefit, he would have saved about 50% in personal income taxes, equivalent to $19 million tax savings. Since the expense was not allowed and the expense were paid for by the company, he now had to report $38 million additional on top of the $4 million that he already reported in his personal tax return, resulting in personal income taxes of $19 million. Yikes. So no wonder CRA is going after this. Now, let's dive deep into why CRA and why the court judge has decided that he had to report the 38 million, because the primary reason of this judgment is because the primary purpose of the trip is not for business purpose. As you can imagine, CRA wanted their 19 million personal income taxes from Guy Liberté. They issued him a notice of reassessment, deeming that he had received the shareholder benefit. Well, no one wanted to pay $19 million to CRA as well. So Guy Liberté took CRA to court. They fought and they went to court. Mr. Liberté argued that his personal participation of this trip was for marketing. It was mainly a stunt marketing event for the business, and the entire 42 million expenses should therefore be deductible as marketing expense, and therefore shouldn't be considered as a shareholder benefit to him being a shareholder. He also argued that Cirque du Soleil received unpaid earned media exposure from this trip, which exceed the cost of his trip, and that this supports the entire cost of his trip being a proper business expense. Well, the judge acknowledged the increase in media exposure as a result of this event to Cirque du Soleil, because this trip was a huge media attention grab. However, the judge concluded that the primary purpose of this trip was more for personal purpose rather than for business purpose, based on the following reasons. Well, Mr. Liberté admitted in multiple videos interviews online that going to space had been his childhood dreams, pointing that he wants a trip for himself. Now, the two initial payment worth about 25 million US, made to Space Adventure, which is the company that took him to space, the initial payment was made by Guy Liberté's holding company rather than directly from Cirque du Soleil's operation. Now, resolution to authorize the trip also did not mention why they are doing the trip. What's the purpose of the trip? If the resolution stated that the purpose of the trip was for marketing, it would help Guy Liberté's argument that the trip was created for marketing purpose. And the agreement with Space Adventures was initially signed between the holding company and Space Adventure, not directly related to the operating company, Cirque du Soleil's business. There was no evidence showing that anyone else other than Guy Liberté, the owner, the major shareholder, would be sent to space. Because if it is a legitimate marketing expense, you would then consider sending multiple options. Sending different people to maximize the media exposure. Also, Guy Liberté also claimed that the expense helped Cirque du Soleil's debut in Russia, but Russia's operation has other arm's length partners. The cost of this show was charged back, but later got reimbursed to the Russia partner. So Russia's operations bears no cost for this trip, even though he argued that the trip was primarily generating revenue, generating marketing exposure for this Russian operation. And Cirque du Soleil did not monitor the increased exposure during and shortly after the trip was taken. If you spend $42 million on marketing, you would want to know what kind of result you're getting. But they show no evidence that they monitor the increased exposure and how they could make money off that expense. Cirque du Soleil had never done any other major stunt-type marketing events before the 2009 International Space Station trip. Cirque du Soleil's promotion planning was started after he committed to taking the trip. It wasn't started before he committed to taking the trip. So based on all these criteria and all these reasons, the judge found that the primary purpose of this trip was purely personal. So he disallowed the deduction, but allowed the actual cost incurred by Cirque du Soleil and the foundation to promote the trip. So the promotional cost was deducted, but the cost of the trip, the $42 million, was not allowed to be a deduction. And therefore, what it means is that the $38 million that Mr. Liberté did not report on his personal income tax return as shareholder benefit, now he had to report that $38 million, which would result in on $19 million of tax payable in his personal tax return. Now, so if that is not tax deductible, if that type of travel expense is not deductible, what is deductible? My trip wasn't deductible, so as Guy Liberté's trip was not deductible. So what could be deductible? The main thing is this: the primary reason for your trip must be for business purpose. If the primary purpose of your trip is to attend a business-related conference or to meet with suppliers, prospects, clients, make sure you have documentation such as email communication before you plan the trip. The sequence of the events also matters. If you also want to take a tour, have some R&R while you are there, while you're on your business trip, timing and evidence would matter too. Room and board, however, would be deductible if the trip is for business. Expenses incurred for personal enjoyment would not be deductible. Now, let's use a quick example to explain. You're attending a mastermind, real estate mastermind in Florida to explore the opportunities to invest in real estate in the US market. So you're attending, you're planning the trip, and because the mastermind trip is happening in Florida, you're also thinking, okay, maybe I would extend the trip for a few days, bring my families down, and spend a few days at Disney. Now, the primary purpose of your trip initially is for business reason because you book it for the purpose of attending the mastermind. And so the cost of your own flight, the cost of the hotel, and the cost of lodging and also food during the time that you attend the event would be tax deductible. Now, the additional extended stay, the extended time in the hotel for you to go to Disney World with your family would not be tax deductible because that's for personal enjoyment only. On the other hand, if you plan your vacation first, then tag on some business activities afterwards, with that type of timing, the timing of your email communication and planning would have been completely different. Publicity may be a good thing or bad thing. Be careful with what you publish online because guess what? CRA also has access to online, also has access to Google. Whenever I tell people that CRA auditors do Google as well, people always laugh. It's true. If you can search for the information online, CRA auditors can also do the same thing. And trust me, they would. If you're telling people on social media that you are taking your family for a Disney cruise, chances are they can also find out. What you publish online matters. Family can come along, but be careful and deduct only what's business related. If your family is coming along and they do not participate in the business, you probably should keep their expense as personal. If the primary purpose of the family making the trip was to help out at the trade show or attending the mastermind with you, then the trip would be deductible. Just be mindful with the key consideration here. Is the primary reason for your trip business related or personal purpose? Now that we have summed up the rule of thumb on whether you can deduct certain type of travel expenses or not, I hope you like this video. If you like it, make sure you give us a thumbs up. And if you find it video useful for your friends and families, make sure that you share that with people that could also benefit in listening to this video. Until next time.